Well, we are a little bit, we're an hour and 7 minutes behind tonight. Welcome to the show, IB Nation Sports Talk. It's Wednesday, along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. We'll be answering plenty of questions in the mailbag. Jesse's got some Indiana offensive whiteboard as well. Joe just chiming in right away, says he hopes this 6 o'clock thing is not going to be the new norm. No, Brian has, had some things go on at his house over the last several months, and from what I understand, they were doing construction today, so he pushed his show back, start time back, an hour. So he asked me to push ours back an hour, so there wouldn't be too much overlap. They're still going after starting at 2 o'clock, so, but it is definitely not the plan to go back to 6 o'clock. Does that make you happy, Jesse?
Yes, the 5 o'clock show is the much better hour.
I know.
Get it in.
I didn't know what to do with myself with this extra hour tonight, to be honest. I was like,
I did.
What are we doing?
I came up with prestigious whiteboards today. So that's what I did with my extra hour.
You got to go a little bit more in detail with your whiteboard. Huh? All right.
A little bit more, I would say, efficient. I have a better knowledge now, so like I can be short and compact with it instead of drawing it out. I think that's going to be the real advantage for today.
Okay. Salty, I prefer 5 o'clock as well. I have just started loving this 5 o'clock. We used to start for probably 2 years. We were doing 6 o'clock, and then we switched to 5. And I think it's been awesome. It's been great. Love it. Love every minute.
Naomi likes 5 o'clock better as well.
I'm sure she does. All right, I do want to tell you about our friends at MyBookie, because if you've been following football this season, it's been a wild ride, and we're hitting the home stretch now. Favorites cashing in at a historic rate. I've been using MyBookie this season, and if you're wondering where to start, I've got a great little cheat code for you called Risk-Free Thursdays. What you do is every Thursday, you can take advantage of a no-pressure bet that's there to help you build up your bankroll. All you have to do is look under the bet boost in the sports book, and you will see it. It's basically a free shot at some extra cash, and we all love that. MyBookie makes it easy for us to bet smart and bet big, not just about throwing out random parlays. It's about finding value and making plays that make sense. So if you're new to the game, use my promo code IRISH on your first deposit, and they will double your money instantly. Extra cash in your account right away. No wait, no hassle. You can use it anytime on any game you want. So bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. We have plenty of questions in there right now. Let's just start with Tyler, since he just threw in a super chat, and thank you for the super chat, Tyler. Rank all 12 head coaches with the most pressure heading into the college football playoffs. Man, I didn't even look at the question before I said let's throw this. I just saw the super chat. So, all right. I'll start. I'll just say Ryan Day is at the top of the list. Do you agree with that? Like, if Ryan Day loses to Tennessee, I know there's he's secure and, he's getting them to, I think after the Michigan thing, I think, and the, millions, multi-millions of dollars that they put into that to put that team together, I think Ryan Day is at the top of the list.
Yeah, I'd have Ryan Day at number one. I think that the easiest way to kind of go about this question is you go, you fill in the top and then you fill in the bottom, and I think you kind of fill in the middle. So yeah. I agree with your top, and my bottom, I would say 3 would be Boise State, Arizona State, and SMU, because those teams had no expectations to make the playoff this season.
Those coaches are they're living the good life right now.
I would almost put Cignetti and Dabo down there too, because I think, I guess
for sure. I think Cignetti is probably the absolute least pressure. There's zero pressure.
You can lump them all together at that bottom part. You know what I mean? Yeah. So those are the coaches that had they're athletic directors, they're universities, they're just elated that they're even in this playoff. There's nothing that I think could go wrong.
Right. That's exactly right. Arizona State, Boise State, SMU, and Indiana. Zero pressure for them. So, whatever order you want to put them in, none of them are feeling any pressure. Like they're all in the college football playoff for the first time. Of course, it's an expanded field, obviously, but still, I mean, that's part of the excitement of this field. Like you're breathing new breath into the playoffs. There's more teams involved, there's more conferences involved, more players, more coaches, the whole thing. So I agree. They're all at the bottom. Is Dabo under any real pressure?
That's what I mean. I kind of have him right up above that group because I think internally there might be more expectations, but externally, I don't think the media, a lot of college football, I don't know if you would say that they had a lot of expectation for Clemson. And he's been in these situations before. He's won national championships. I think Clemson making it was a bit of a surprise itself. So I think that kind of takes some of the expectation off Dabo.
Okay, I can agree with that.
Where do we
I think James Franklin potentially
like Franklin?
I think he's got to be second. I don't think there's a ton of pressure on any of these guys, maybe except for Ryan Day, especially if you lose a home playoff game to Tennessee right out of the gate, coupling that with Michigan and everything else. Again, like I don't know that there's a ton of pressure on any of these guys, but I would probably put James Franklin second because, what's the conversation with Franklin? Can't win big games. And, if they had an expanded playoff, Penn State would always be in. Okay, so now you're in. Now you got to win some games. Like I think that Penn State and Franklin almost have to win 2 games. Not that he's going to get fired if he doesn't, but I think at the very least, if he gets knocked off in the first round, especially playing a home game, even the second round, I think that, because of the path that they've got, all they've got to do basically is beat SMU at home, and then you've got a group of 5 team in the second round. Like if you don't beat SMU and Boise State and get yourself into the semifinals, I think there could be a little fire under James Franklin's belly.
Yeah, I mean, the narrative would just continue with James Franklin. He can't win the big ones, especially on the biggest stage. And I think also, Penn State's lie in this field also has to be taken into consideration because if you ask everyone, ask who you'd want to be in this college football, format right now as it was seated, it would be Penn State. They have what is considered one of the easiest paths. So I think that has to be weighed into when you what you're considering with James Franklin.
DJ says Dabo is under pressure. I mean, I can see, because they kind of got in as not a Cinderella, but obviously they weren't a typical Clemson team. They had to win the conference championship game just to get into the playoff. I mean, he's got to match up with Texas. So like if you're putting it like like Dabo's job or his future is riding on beating Texas in the first round, I don't think that that's necessarily the case. Do you?
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah. And then like you were saying, kind of go, like fill in the middle. I think Sark is in the middle. I don't think there's any pressure out at Oregon for Lanning at all. I don't think there's any, like real pressure for Kirby Smart. They're back in the playoff. I think all those guys like that kind of reside in the middle. And then, again, it's like Ryan Day, James Franklin at the top. I would put Cignetti completely at the bottom with those other coaches you talked about at SMU and Boise State and Arizona State. And then it's just kind of in the middle there someplace. Good question to get us started here tonight.
Where does Marcus Freeman fall for you?
Oh, yeah, that's right. We didn't – I mean, I don't think he's under any pressure at all. Like, we did a whole show last week about it's time to lock him up to an extension, right? Like, that's the biggest thing to me. And,
right.
Like, I think if, like if you're saying, well, Marcus Freeman's not going anywhere. Okay, well, that's your attitude. Well, I think you got to make sure you keep him around even longer, the way this thing is trending right now. Because, I mean, this turned into a better team as the season went on, obviously. and we got to see so much of that young talent really shine. So, again, I'd probably plug him, like if I was putting Signetti, SMU, Arizona State, Boise State at the bottom, I'd probably put him right on top of it. And we forgot about Heupel as well. I'd put Heupel probably then right above Marcus Freeman in that respect. What do you think?
So I think this is a tough question because I think internally everything you said, yes, is true, but externally no one really cares about that, and you're still Notre Dame, and a lot of people have a lot of preconceived notions of what Notre Dame does in these stages. You could make the comparison almost to James Franklin in terms of Notre Dame's postseason success, whether that's playoff games, New Year's Six bowl games. The question is always, does Notre Dame ultimately belong? And so I do think that there is a pressure on Notre Dame to win, at least in this first round, considering you have the home game. It's IU who, I'm not completely saying this, but a lot of people would perceive IU to be an inferior, opponent to Notre Dame. And so I think a lot of people believe that this is set up for not set up, but Notre Dame has a path to win this first round game, and they likely should. And if that doesn't happen, then I do believe that there is maybe some external pressure, on Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame in general as a football team. So I think because you're the coach of Notre Dame, if you don't get certain things accomplished, naturally there is going to be some pressure on you. But internally, I agree with what you said. They are continuing to trend where they need to go, and I think they're only going to continue to get better. And I do believe he deserves an extension, but I also do believe he should win this first round game as well. So
absolutely,
that is my long answer there.
Well, and Vince has said if they don't win this first round game, then basically this whole season is a disappointment.
I can get on board with that.
I kind of would see it that way as well, because you're hosting this game. It's not like, you're not an underdog.
And it's expanded playoffs. Both teams are getting in.
Yeah, exactly. This is a game that Notre Dame should absolutely win. That doesn't mean it's going to be a walkover. Huh?
I believe this is a program kind of defining moment. We talked about the Texas A&M game and what that was, and I think what that was for Marcus Freeman and this team. But then we saw what happened the week after, and everything has led up to this. I believe this is another program-defining moment for Notre Dame football. Are you actually back up on your feet and a changed program from the last regime that was here for almost 10 years and their failure to get it done on the national stage?
Joe asked, do we think Reese Davis can keep his hatred for Notre Dame under wraps until he gets off campus Friday evening? Game day, of course, is going to be here.
So can I add to this as well? I believe, sure. I can't remember the guy's name. He's the older gentleman in the CBS broadcast. I saw it last night. I believe it's no, he's not. Sorry, not broad. He's the in studio with like Aaron Taylor. There's four guys that sit. They do like the pregame show, the halftime show for CBS during football games.
Is he the former player that you're thinking of? I don't watch that show enough to know. I mean, I kind of haven't. Yeah.
Let me find his name real quick, but I saw a clip last night, and he's already saying, picking Indiana to beat Notre Dame. And of course, he was the same guy that like pregame USC and Notre Dame picked USC to win. I just feel like every time I see the guy, he's like Desmond Howard. He just picks Notre Dame to lose because he wants Notre Dame to lose. All right, someone help me. Michael Hahn says Adam Zucker is
Adam Zucker's not. He's not an older guy though. Neuheisel is a little bit older. That Tom
maybe
talking about. Zucker is the younger, probably late 30s-ish, 40-ish, host of the show.
It is. Again, I just Googled Rick Neuheisel. That is exactly who it is.
So it's Rick Neuheisel. Okay.
I saw the face. I couldn't come
Former
up with the name.
UCLA and Colorado head coach, Rick Neuheisel.
There we go. I thank you for the chat for that assist. But he is along the lines of Reese Davis, Desmond Howard, just people I feel like never say anything good about Notre Dame. Like I get it. You might have an opinion, but part of your job is also to highlight the things that Notre Dame does well simultaneously, right? But it just feels like every time I see them, it's always led with what Notre Dame does bad or wrong, or, NIU basically. I'm getting so tired of the NIU thing. It was so long ago. It's one game. It's the season is now over. There's 12 teams left. It's a new season. Let's get after this.
Well, and the irony of it is, like people like that who keep bringing up NIU are doing it obviously as a pejorative, and it's, it wasn't good at the time, but Marcus Freeman found a way over the course of the season to spin it, to use it to motivate his team. So like he still brings it up with his team. We saw that Fighting Irish Media clip, I think, halftime of the USC game. Let's finish this second half like we didn't do against NIU, so like he still uses it as a motivator and a reminder, but like outside, it's like, okay, it's again, like Kurt Signetti was bringing it up over the weekend on CBS with that crew that you're talking about, like the whole, we lost to the number 2 team in the nation. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. Okay, well, as a coach, I get it. You're going to promote your own program, but I do agree with what you're saying. Like these hosts of these different shows,
I don't think you
do owe it, to give the complete picture of these teams, not just one side.
That's all I'm asking for, and I agree with what you're saying. It's just, it's so ridiculous that the whole NIU thing, I believe that it's I kind of lost my train of thought here, but I'm trying to find the final words to cap this thing off.
What makes it more difficult is your internet is chopping a little bit. So it's like, I don't know when you're pausing to think. I don't know when your internet is freezing up. So it's made it even more challenging. So let's just move on. How about that? Kevin wants to know what we make of North Carolina hiring another senior citizen as head coach who never coached in college. I don't believe it's final yet. From what I saw, here it is. ESPN sources Belichick finalizing deal to be UNC head coach. It is on their front page now. What do you think? Oh, and there goes Jesse. All right. Well, I'll tell you where I'm surprised at just the amount of, like people talking about this, whether it's on ESPN. I was just watching a little bit of PTI, and I think if they didn't lead off the show with it, they were talking about it early in the show. Like there's been a lot of just glowing praise for North Carolina. Like from North Carolina's perspective, you're North Carolina football. Like if Bill Belichick is interested and he lays out a plan, that demonstrates that he has a grasp on what it takes to succeed in college, I feel like North Carolina is a little starstruck. Let's put it that way. Like from a pure coaching standpoint, there's no doubt Bill Belichick is one of the greatest coaches in the history of the NFL. So from a pure coaching perspective, you're North Carolina football. You have no real tradition to hang itself on. Like you just had probably one of the best head coaches that you've ever had with Mac Brown. And then, like you showed him the door, but it is a gaping hole and a potential blind spot for Bill Belichick because like he is the greatest, one of the greatest head coaches in NFL history. So is he going to surround himself with people with college experience who he's going to listen to? Like there's a big difference in his way of doing things, which if you've looked at the track record and hear people talk about Belichick, it is largely transactional because it is professional. There is no, like great relationship that you hear about. Like Bill Belichick and Tom Brady aren't buddies, for example. They were together for 2 decades. They're not buddies. Like the whole interpersonal thing, which has become, like Marcus Freeman as an example, but there are plenty of other coaches as well. Like with the relationships that you need to build with these young guys, you've never heard any of those kind of stories coming out of Bill Belichick in New England. It's what have you done for me lately? And if you can't hack it, I'm going to cut you. You're out of here. Well, you can't cut a college kid in the middle of the season because, it's like there's only so many guys on the roster. You've got to be able to develop the roster, build the roster, like build the depth on your roster, all those kind of things. Again, completely opposite of what you do, building an NFL team. So like it's the same sport, but it's two completely different things. So I think he's a great X's and O head coach. I just don't know from the relationship standpoint, the recruiting thing you can talk about. Obviously, he's going to have to hire a staff. There's going to be plenty of people, who are going to be part of that, recruiting as well. It's not just going to be Belichick. But, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. Part of his manifesto is, I'm going to build this NFL program, and you're going to come in here, and if you have NFL aspirations, I'm going to get you to the NFL. And it sounds a lot like what Charlie Weiss was talking about when he came to Notre Dame. Shocker, he came out of the Belichick tree, and it didn't work out for him, because there wasn't enough emphasis on actually building the roster, winning football games. Like more of the talk was about like, we'll get you to the NFL. What do you think, Jess?
I think there's a lot to this one. So I think first and foremost, this is a win-win for Bill Belichick and for North Carolina. Bill Belichick gets to get back into coaching, maybe get back to the roots and still that and show, I think to some degree that he's got it. And I still think his end goal is to make it back to the NFL because I think he does want to catch Don Shula, of course. But also this is a win for the University of North Carolina and their football team and the attention that it just brings to them, because even if they're not good, Bill Belichick coaching North Carolina is going to bring fans in. They want to see Bill Belichick as the head coach.
It's going to bring attention to the program. That's for sure. Yep.
But, I've also heard reports that Bill Belichick came in with a 400-page binder and outlined, everything that he intended to do in terms of offense, defense, nutrition, recruiting, NIL, all of that stuff. And so, I don't know how much validity there is to that. So, I think, again, it is going to be a win-win for both sides in the end. But I also think that it's going to be tough because of the things that you started to outline. And I think the one at the top of the list for me would be how he actually relates and develops 18 to 22-year-olds, what those relationships look like. Is it completely just going to be transactional? And, you brought up that they're on scholarships and it's not like the NFL. Well, to a degree, college football has become somewhat more like the NFL with the transfer portal. So I'm sure if he doesn't like a guy, he's going to say, hey, just go hit the transfer portal at the end of the day. You're not going to play here. You're not going to cut it for what I'm going to do. So, I think that's going to be an aspect of it as well. He can send people and pull people from the transfer portal. And I think that helps him in terms of, providing a crutch for his lack of relationships and development of players and the relationships he's going to have with 18 to 22-year-olds.
Yeah, Josh said and this is reportedly part of the deal, is he's trying to get his son, Steve Belichick, on the staff. And there was, like what that involvement is going to be. He's currently, working for the Washington Commanders. Steve Belichick is, and they're, like one of the initial reports was that Bill Belichick wanted his son to be the coach in waiting, from the moment he takes the job. So that's an interest. Like, you don't even know how this guy is going to do, and you want some kind of guarantee that the son is going to be the coach in waiting for when Bill Belichick does retire. Stephen A. Smith said that he thinks that North Carolina is beneath Bill Belichick because it's not an SEC program, because it's only North Carolina football. What do you think about that? I tend to agree with it. Like, you're freaking Bill Belichick. Like, is North Carolina the only, like, is this really the only program of any kind showing you any interest? When this came out, I thought that he was kind of using this as like to get some buzz around him, to get his name out there, and ultimately was going to end up in the NFL again because he does want to break Don Shula's record. But the guy is also 72 years old. So I don't know. It's a crazy situation. I mean, again, if you're North Carolina, it's a no-lose situation because you're North Carolina, and what do you have to lose if you're North Carolina, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing for North Carolina to lose in this situation. And I agree with what you were saying. I thought this was really just a grab by Bill Belichick to get his name back into some circles or maybe some just, heat around his name as the NFL season was kind of winding down. But I mean, there must be no positive feedback from some of these NFL GMs on, Bill Belichick. The temperature must be low, I guess, at the end of the day. Or might be a combination too of the teams that are interested. Bill Belichick just doesn't have interest back in because he has expressed before that he's not just going to take any job. I don't think he wants to do a complete rebuild. There still has to be some pieces involved at some of these teams.
Salty wants to know which offensive and defensive player will shine the most in the playoffs. I assume he's talking about Notre Dame.
Finally, some good Notre Dame questions. I think you have to go with the most explosive player, most hyped player in the Notre Dame backfield, and that's Jeremiah Love. And I think defensively, it's going to be someone in the secondary. I think I want to say a defensive lineman, but their defensive line doesn't necessarily get a ton of sacks, right? Like they don't come up with the big output in the sack category. So
stick around for rapid fire. Stick around for rapid fire because I've got some little knowledge I'm going to drop on you with that one, with that comment.
So I like to go with the proven experience, and I think where some of these teams think they're going to attack Notre Dame in the secondary. So I'm going to go with Xavier Watts just because of I think he's that guy. He comes up big in bigger games. He makes big game moments, I think.
I'm going Riley Leonard because of his style of play. I mean, you can't go wrong saying Jeremiah Love. I'm not going to disagree with that, but I'm going to go with Leonard, like leading the moment, like being the guy who leads the Irish through this race, through the playoffs starting at Notre Dame Stadium. I'll go with him. I like your Xavier Watts as well, because I think that this is going to be one of the more, like one of the two most difficult tasks that Curtis Rourke has faced this season. I think it's going to be a lot tougher for him in this game than it has been for him all season long, especially, from a passing standpoint because of the weather and everything else in a 8:00 game at Notre Dame Stadium. TD4ND wants to know which will be the biggest upset in the first round.
Upset.
So you got Clemson, Texas, Tennessee, Ohio State, SMU, Penn State, Indiana, Notre Dame. Honestly, like, I'm not picking any upsets right now. Are you? Like, do you like any upsets out of that group?
Yeah, if I had to tell you the two that I would feel the best about, I would say Clemson and SMU. I'm gonna go ahead and say SMU.
Ooh, SMU over Penn State.
Yeah.
That's like
where
it.
I'm leaning right now. I like what their quarterback can do. I think Oregon put some good film out there. I know they have a good quarterback and good athletes, but I thought that the playoff, yes, Penn State kept it close, but I mean they got exposed. Their whole thing is they're supposed to have a good defense and an offense that can, pretty much do enough to keep them in games. Their defense got exposed by Oregon, and I think that's going to be something. I think SMU possesses some athletes too who can kind of press Penn State the same way that Oregon did. So I'm just saying, don't count SMU out because
their defense has holes, and that's again what they're kind of supposed to be the backbone of their team.
I like that. I like that call. I don't know about SMU. Like I like that was actually, I think, of the conference championship games, I think that is the only one that I missed on in our picks last week, was the SMU Clemson game.
That brings me to a good point. I said very early on that Clemson was going to win that game, and a lot of people criticized me in the chat. So I'm gonna get mine back on that one right now. It's not very often I get to get one of those.
Yeah, I don't like Clemson against Texas. I think that, I know you can knock Texas for who they've played other than Georgia this season, but that defense is legit, and I think Clemson is going to have a hard time scoring more than a couple of touchdowns against Texas in that game. So,
That game just comes down to Cade Klubnik, but I still think Clemson is still a really good defensive team at the end of the day.
Salty wants to know if Notre Dame should pursue USC wide receiver Deuce Robinson now that he's in the transfer portal, and would it give Christian Gray PTSD? I was going to say, like, at least Christian Gray would not have to face Deuce Robinson, the 6'6" receiver. He's a sophomore, so like the academic side of it, USC is a private school, so maybe the academics would line up. I would say if it works out academically, I'm sure Notre Dame has a really good list of guys who they're already talking to. It's an interesting one. The academics line up and they think that it would be a good fit. Why not?
Yeah, I would say why not? Because I think obviously he's a talented wide receiver. I hope Christian Gray wouldn't get scared during practice having to go against this guy every day. But I think the bigger question is, what are they looking to do offensively next season? If it's an offense kind of like this season, where it's kind of largely predicated around run and even more so the running ability of your quarterback. Does it even really make sense to go out, and does it make sense for USC for a wide receiver like that who just came out of an air raid offense under Lincoln Riley to kind of go into maybe not as many targets, receptions in this offense. So
Sure.
I just don't know what the plan is with either CJ Carr or Kenny Minchey, if it's going to be more passing, if Carr or Minchey have the ability to run kind of like Riley Leonard, if they want to run run an offense similar to this season. So that's more of, I think, like a fit question. But if they want to
Right.
start airing the ball out and pushing downfield like the days with Will Fuller and Mike Denbrock, then I'm all about getting a wide receiver like this.
Yeah. I'm sure they're going to go out and they're going to bring in at least a couple more again next year. Would be kind of a safe assumption. Cindy says she is beyond excited for the postseason, also nervous. Scale of 1 to 10. What is your excitement?
Oh, for me, it's a 10 out of a 10 excitement. I have tickets, taking the day off. I'm going with my two best friends. We're going to be, kind of tailgating throughout the day. Like, it's going to be a great time. And obviously, I say that before, the game ends. I think, yes, the excitement is at a 10, but I'm only going to be even more excited if they go on and win the game. And obviously, if something happens where they don't, I would be obviously a lot less excited.
Through the roof. 10 out of 10 for me. I mean, it's like it's pretty cool that we're sitting here on December 11th, and 9 days from now we're going to be at Notre Dame Stadium for the first ever on-campus FBS college football playoff game. Like, no one has ever done this before. Notre Dame Stadium is going to host the very first on-campus playoff game, and like, throw out the opponent, just like the whole thing. College football playoffs are here, and Notre Dame gets to host one of these games. So
game day is going to be here.
Game day's going to be there. The whole thing.
Let's put it like this. I'm also not going to my Cleveland office Christmas party. It is Friday the 20th, and we're doing a spirit exchange, having an open house, having pizza, wings, gonna go down to some local bars after. And I had to break the news to everyone. Sorry.
You broke their hearts.
Priorities.
Have you received the ticket transfer yet?
I don't know if we officially have like the tickets, but I mean, our purchase has been made. It's being processed. We paid all the stuff, and there is a guaranteed delivery. I guess is what I. But I also didn't buy them. There, and I'm not asking the person every day, hey, do we have the
tickets yet? Do we have the tickets yet? Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy quite yet.
Will Riley Leonard have an NFL career? And if so, what will it be?
So this is actually a really good question because I was on the fence about, what Riley Leonard could project to be in the NFL. And then I listened to the RG3 podcast, and we'll get into a lot of that later, but this isn't something that we're going to get into later. So I feel like it fits this situation. He talked about on there, he did this the old school traditional way. He only played 4 years, right? Like, and he's going to be done. There's a lot of quarterbacks, Dylan Gabriel, Rourke. I mean, there's a lot of guys who play quarterback longer, 5th, 6th,
5 and 6 years. Yeah.
7 years. I mean, look at Bo Nix and what he's now doing in the NFL. And he was in college for what, like 6 or 7 seasons, I believe. So that kind of put into context, I still think Riley Leonard hasn't hit his ceiling. I still think he's raw. And I still think if you gave him, 3 years, 2-3 years, like some Penix, Bo Nix, some of these guys who are, already in the NFL, and Bo Nix has turned into a really good starter for the Broncos in year 1. I think that Riley Leonard has the potential to get there, but I still think he's really raw now. But I agree kind of with what he was saying is, yes, he started as a freshman and that didn't really, you're a freshman and a sophomore, you're still learning. And then he kind of gets hurt in his most pivotal developmental year. And that was a big reason why he came to Notre Dame is he needed to accelerate that process and development back up. And I think that's what he's done. And I think he's still kind of coming out of that shell and still has a lot more that he can do. So if he gets in an NFL team and still kind of develops and maybe he's just, a backup quarterback or a practice squad quarterback for the first couple of years, I still think he could grow into a potential NFL quarterback, but he's still really raw.
Yeah. With all these guys, getting the 5th and 6th years of eligibility, like Riley Leonard started school a year after the COVID exemption year. So this is it, 4 years for him because he played too much last year when he got hurt, like you said, in a pivotal year for him. It feels like he really needs like 1 more year of college, but unfortunately that's not going to happen for him, so it's now or never. I'm not, somebody asked this yesterday. I'm not overly optimistic. Like if Sam Hartman looked more like a classic NFL quarterback than Riley Leonard looks right now, because you do have to, you can play the style of football that Riley Leonard plays right now, and you can win a lot of college football games, just like Notre Dame has won 11 games this year. It's different in the NFL. You do have to be able to throw much more consistently, and hit certain passes and the whole thing, so I'm not overly optimistic that Leonard is going to get drafted. If he does, it's probably going to be late. It's more realistic that he'll end up being a free agent sign. And, the good thing with that, if that happens, is, depending on what teams you get the offers from, you have more choice in your situation. Like if I was Riley Leonard and I go undrafted though, and I get a call from the Buffalo Bills or the Baltimore Ravens, I would jump at either one of those opportunities, playing, for the opportunity to get in camp with those kind of cool, because like Josh Allen, not quite as raw as Leonard was when he was still at Wyoming, but there was a big knock on him in terms of could he be a consistent enough passer, because his passing percentage was really low in college, but he has turned, like, look what he has turned into over time. And like those to me would be 2 of the best situations that Leonard could be in if he could get into camp and potentially, like at least sign on to the practice squad, for the first year or two, like to be in there, behind a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson, because that's obviously his style, and and have an opportunity to continue to try to hone his passing game as well.
Yeah, and I caught some flack from some people, who, when I said I think Riley Leonard, I'm not saying he's like this player now. I'm not saying he even might be at some day, at some point. But I think he plays the most like Josh Allen in the
Yeah,
NFL. Um, and if I'm Riley Leonard, I'm watching and studying Josh Allen film, because that's his path to the NFL. And so yeah, I think he has to land in an advantageous situation like you were talking about, and that would be, being on a practice squad for the Bills, maybe for a couple seasons, and then ultimately getting a shot at some point. And maybe I'm not even saying that's with the Bills. I'm just saying maybe he even gets to a point where he gets an opportunity with another team, and he runs an offense similar to what Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills, now Riley Leonard would run.
Yeah. Yeah, we asked Ryan yesterday, and he did say third day dark horse, but that means maybe, like crapshoot. Are you going to get drafted in the 5th or 6th round? And that was really the same with Sam Hartman, and ultimately Hartman was a free agent sign. So I mean, I'm not going to say one way or the. I will say this: if Riley Leonard, leads Notre Dame on a run through the college football playoff, that's more eyeballs that are going to be on him. And, like people start having visions, like these NFL executives of, what could this guy potentially turn into in the NFL, with a little more seasoning, a little more opportunity. So that can definitely play into his favor as well, because the guy is a great athlete. He's a great competitor. He's very tough, all those different things. So it's the passing game that still needs to develop. But I listened to that Out of Pocket podcast that you're talking about. We're going to have some cuts from that. He, Vanilla Griff, formerly Vanilla Vic, Robert Griffin the third, said that he was referring to Riley Leonard as Vanilla Vic before he found out that he was Riley Leonard's favorite player growing up. So he started calling him Vanilla Griff instead. That was pretty cool.
I thought it was a really good podcast, and it's only an hour, so you can get through it.
Yep. USMA 87 watched your huddle last night. That came up. Yep. He was asking for your huddle. We showed your huddle photo, whatever you call that thing.
Oh, that was that Penn.
From the Penn game. Yeah.
Great photo.
Herrick. I said that's probably my favorite action photo of you, even though it's not technically action, but crouched and ready to go. Herrick says, see you in New Orleans. Got 2 tickets for a 75-year-old dad and himself. Both diehard, lifelong fans, legitimately watched nearly every game together, 40 plus years. Well, I hope it works out that way. I think it will. Win one game, you go to New Orleans. That would be a lot of fun. Andre says, best version of Notre Dame offense is blank.
A physical downhill running team that opens up passing lanes when it needs to.
I think that's perfectly said, because, what I was going to say is, kind of piggybacking on some of that. We had some, last night we played some McShay and David Pollock cuts from that podcast. And they were talking about, especially David Pollock, about how much he loved this Irish team. And then, McShay was, he started breaking out, 54, talking about Anthony Knapp, like you could tell that he was watching, just crunching film. They love this Irish offensive line, man. That's what it comes down to. And so if you say best version of Notre Dame is just what you're talking about, hard hitting, point of contact. You've got 3 guys who can break a run on, at any given moment. And then, like you said, I think that all sets up passing lanes for Riley Leonard. I think that's absolutely the best version, especially at this time of year and in the kind of game that they're going to have to play next week at Notre Dame Stadium in that cold weather.
Yeah, I mean, David Pollock said it best. Notre Dame is one of the few teams who very certainly knows their identity. And that is a physical football team. They want to smash you in the mouth, and they're going to tell you and make you stop them because they have 3 guys who ran over 500 yards. Like, it's no secret they're going to run the ball, and it's going to be a long night if you can't slow them down.
Josh says they had another guy in the show and they asked who you'd rather have, Riley Leonard or Will Howard. Well, guess what, Josh? Tonight is your night because you will hear that cut coming up in rapid fire. I saved that one for today. We didn't use that one yesterday. We'll be talking about that in rapid fire. They were talking about which quarterback would you rather have, Riley Leonard or Will Howard? And I thought that was a really interesting question. By the way, Joe, I forgot to flash this up earlier. Who's all going? Who's going to be in South Bend in 9 days? We'll be here. Who else is going to be here in town?
Hands up.
Come on. Salty just loves to
Tiger Bait.
Throw some salt in the wound. He said, Preston from Tiger Bait now says Brian Kelly arrived when LSU was a dumpster fire, but challenged Brian when he said this 3 years ago. Is a formal apology due? Of course it is, especially if he's literally using those words that Brian was using, when they hired Brian Kelly, and, these guys were completely, getting all butthurt and taking offense to it and everything else. They absolutely do. Like, they have seen the light. They have seen the true colors down there on the bayou.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much more to add to that one. My answer would be, of course, yes, they do.
I mean, that was a no-brainer, right? Which first-round playoff game are you second most looking forward to watching, and which is least most?
Tennessee and Ohio State would, I think, be at the top of my most excited list. And I guess SMU and Penn State would be at the bottom.
Really? Even though you think SMU is going to win?
Yeah, but it's a tough question. I think Clemson and Texas is going to be a close game, actually, and I'm excited to watch Dabo versus Sarkisian.
Interesting.
It's still a Penn State Franklin team, and no offense, but I don't know who SMU's coach is, and I feel like there's just more rounds, there's more meat on that for me, that Clemson and Texas game. But it's like, I'm still excited. You just told me to pick the least excited one.
Yeah. I think I'm least excited about Clemson, Texas, honestly. And I would say most excited about Ohio State, Tennessee after the Notre Dame game, of course. It's like 8-9 matchup at Ohio State. Go Vols, baby. Go Vols. Well, maybe not. I don't know.
No, it's Go Vols.
So Salty had a BK follow-up. BK defenders, admittedly a small group, say he won't be fired if he has a highly ranked recruiting class. Did he do well enough in the 2025 class?
I don't think he's going to be fired.
Yeah.
Regardless of what his recruiting class is.
He's only 3 years into it was a 10-year contract they gave him, right?
I'm not sure, but I saw his leash is, I think, about two or three more seasons. I would
say. That's what I think.
Unless it's just like completely a disaster next season.
That's what I think too. That's what I think. I don't like. I know fans are definitely upset, but hey, join the crowd, right? Like,
we're all upset about something.
Salty asked this last week, and I didn't get to it. He says, you've been a guest on radio, TV, and hosted guests on IB. Who are the top 5 persons with whom you have partnered? Now, when you say partnered, Salty, are you just saying like people I've hosted shows with, or like
maybe the people you've also interviewed?
I mean, there's like a million. Like, if I'm going to throw people I've interviewed into the mix, then Maneri obviously is going to be up there.
Paul Maneri, baseball coach at Notre Dame, won championship at LSU. Now is at South Carolina.
Right, one of my all-time favorites. Man, I mean, in terms of hosts, like, I'll just say it's been a little bit hit and miss over the years, and I kind of like the two hosts that I have right now out of all the ones that I've hosted with in the past. I mean, like by and large, like anyone that I've interviewed, has been great, and there's been a million of them. Like we had Rocket Ismail on a million years ago. I've talked to Rocky Blyer, Ara Parsegian, Lou Holtz, on down the line. All the different, like back in the day, got some one-on-ones with like both Willingham and Weiss. We obviously don't get like one-on-one
You used to do the
stuff
coaches show
anymore.
all the time.
Yeah, the coaches shows. That's right.
At what, Texas Roadhouse?
That's right. No, Logan Roadhouse.
Logan Roadhouse. Sorry, I knew it was a Roadhouse.
Yeah, but I didn't have a co-host to that show. It was like all me doing the interviews and all that. I mean, that was. I'm trying to think. I'll just leave it at that. Favorite hosts, guys I'm hosting with. I mean, Brian and I have done, like I've been here for what? This is my third season, and Brian and I have done maybe 4 shows together, ever. We've got one coming up Saturday from what
There we go.
So
that's a nice little promotion there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I think what's the difference with this is I think you and Brian, it's nice to have you guys separate because you provide different kind of outlooks. It's not just kind of, I think, under more or less the same umbrella, right? It's I think there's kind of different aspects to each show. So it's like I think it's more content, I guess, this way.
Salty says I've had 2 weeks to mull this question over. I mean, honestly,
I thought you gave an answer that was
for most of my career,
sufficient.
Like most of what I do has been solo. Like I don't have because shocker, budgets, and I mean, I'm not just going to come out. I'm not going to come out and tell you the people I absolutely didn't like, even though the one at the top of the list was at the radio station that I worked at right before I came here. So if you're familiar with that, you can put 2 and 2 together. It's not very hard to figure out. Like
what about your days co doing games with your good buddy Pete LaFleur, Sluggo?
Oh, Sluggo.
What about that? What about some people you've done baseball or basketball games with?
Again, like there haven't been like Karen Keys, who I'll do the game with tomorrow night. She does a great job, former Notre Dame women's basketball player. My sister actually, like, and you know this because she's got a playing background. She, like, during that national championship women's basketball season, she popped on and did the Final Four games with me. She called the very first Notre Dame women's basketball win over UConn with me on Martin Luther King Jr. Day in 2001. So that was fun as well.
I didn't know that, to be honest with you, but I have
an
excuse. I was like 4 or 5 at the time, and I don't.
I'll have to pull out. I've got those on CD still. I don't know if I've got them digital, but I'll have to pop those out, and you can take a listen sometime if you want to.
That is some real good color because I mean, obviously she played, obviously a coach now at a at a Division I school. So yeah, I got to go to the archives and find that one.
Yep. Antoine wants to know how long Brian and I have known each other. We have known each other. What's it been? I think it's around 13 years now. We met. The way we met was he was working for one of the other websites, and after I had been laid off by the first radio group, like when things happen, I was kind of floating around doing some stuff for a while, and then I got hired, and we worked together for, I think it was just 1 season, and then he left to go back into coaching, and he did that for 3 or 4 years before he came back here. And actually, I think he went back to work for the same site before he ultimately, left for another site and then finally started this site. So that's how Brian and I met, and that's also how Brian and Vince met. Like same type deal. Vince was working part-time for one of those sites as well.
Full
the
circle.
Radio station for women's basketball here in town, Josh, is 96.1 FM. That's where you can find them in the South Bend market. And of course, you can also find the radio broadcasts at odyssey.com. And I'm going to spell it in the chat because nobody...
It's always on the women's basketball official website. If you go to schedule and then find the game on the schedule, it has a link for TV, radio, stats, all that stuff. So it's always in there.
Yeah. I've tried to post in the I think there it is. I was looking at the wrong page. AUDACY, odyssey.com. Did I ever think Irish Breakdown would get this popular and elaborate? I mean, it was already pretty popular and elaborate when Brian hired me on. I remember when he left Blue and Gold, because he was there before he came here, and I was like, man, that's, it's like you're at Blue and Gold, kind of a legacy, prestige, one of the top websites and all that. But he had an opportunity to start this thing up, and I will say, like, in terms of the podcasting space, there were other people, in this environment, like covering Notre Dame. There have been a lot of people doing the podcasts and things like that, and that was one of the things when I was working at that, last site that I was talking about. I said, hey, my background is radio. Instead of all this writing, what if I did more podcasting? It's, I don't think we can make any money doing that. And, I will say that Brian has blown this thing up. So it's pretty awesome. And I think obviously a big part of it is what the fans bring to this whole thing as well. So it's been pretty cool. Very cool. Jesse, do you want to do some whiteboard now?
Yeah, let me try to go back.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You switched to phone. So now you've got to switch back to computer and see if it's going to work, don't you?
Yeah, so let me do a quick studio swap and we'll see how it's going. I kind of let the computer relax, shut down some more stuff. I'm going as efficient as possibly. So just I'll see if it works here.
All right. Yes, Antoine. Brian did work with Mike Singer from Blue and Gold. And when I was on the radio station I was on, which, as I said, 96.1 here in town, when I was doing my show, I would have Mike on for, I think we did it for maybe for a year. I don't know. Something like that. And, he would come on, we would talk recruiting, those kind of things. Preston, y'all are a dumpster fire. Okay, cool. Well, why are you here then? You got it ready?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Let's do it.
All right. So I think what I wanted to do with today is just kind of get into some of the basic fundamentals of what the IU offense is. They're a really well-coached team, and by definition, Kurt Cignetti runs what would, mainly be considered a spread option offense. And, I kind of heard some people talking about it, and it's, it is hard to stop. And at times, the only way you can kind of stop yourself is by stopping yourself. Really, it's hard for defenses to find answers to everything. And, how this can kind of really be, I guess, broken down is it is kind of a triple option at the end of the day. So, one of the most fundamental plays here that IU runs is what's going to be considered, a spread option offense play. And this one in particular, he has three options, and that's what makes this, really hard to stop defensively. So what you see here is they're going to be in 11 personnel. So one tight end, one running back, three wide receivers. Ball is on the right hash. You have two wide receivers kind of stacked out right, on the numbers, and then the lone wide receiver is going to be to the field side, and he's really stretching out his position as well. So he's going to be beyond the hash. And so again, the first thing in this offense is quarterback has, or I guess what you would say is step one or option run, is the quarterback here can hand the ball off to the running back. And what's going to happen here, or what's going to determine if he's going to hand the ball off to the running back, is you're just reading this defensive end, right? So running back is there's going to be this mesh point. If defensive end, stays essentially on the line of scrimmage, you're going to hand the ball off to the running back. If the defensive end now crashes down, you're going to fake this handoff, and that gets us into, step two, which is quarterback can now get to the perimeter and run the ball. In this particular play, that option is taken away because right here, this corner, who is stacked, on this stack wide receiver, he is going to blitz. And so immediately now option two is gone. But say this guy didn't blitz and no one is, presenting numbers in this area of the field, quarterback can keep it and he can run. And now I think it has to be said about Curtis Work. He is not like Riley Leonard. He is not, this huge dual threat quarterback guy who you should be scared of, running the ball. But if the numbers present itself, he's going to keep that ball and he is going to run it. And especially on this play, because it was inside the 5-yard line, right? So all he knows, he just needs to get 5 yards and get in the end zone. So cornerback blitzes. Now you've taken away option two. Option three, or step three, is this wide receiver is just kind of, basically running a screen here. The stack wide receiver in front of him is immediately going to block down on this corner in front of him. And since the corner blitzed here, that makes his job even easier. He only has to block one guy. So Rourke sees that corner blitzing. He flips it out here to the wide receiver. He's going to catch it. The lead wide receiver is going to secure the block, and he's going to go in, for an easy touchdown. But this is the staple of what Curt Cignetti and the spread option offense is. And really, I've said it before, it's like a triple option kind of look. You have three options. You can hand it to the running back, you can keep it as the quarterback, or you can, flip it out on a quick pass to the wide receiver.
Herrick had an interesting question kind of as you go through some of that stuff. He said, is Indiana a second-level Army team? Their overall team stat rankings seem to suggest they are either second or third-level Army. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think what you have to recognize is Indiana does run the ball well, and they have good running back. So that's like Notre Dame. They want to establish the running game, and that is, ultimately something that they do well. They have a good offensive line, and again, they're just a really well coached team. They're a confident team, and they execute the small details correctly. So that's what you need to do in this sort of in this offense. You have to be. I think it kind of maybe masks some of the talent maybe that's not there.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. And I don't want to just like rip their talent, but I mean that's what it is. Like if you look at the guys on the offensive side of the ball, Rourke is probably like the only guy who has any, sniff at a professional future, don't you think? And like they run this system, to basic, like he brought it with him from James Madison, obviously, where they, like the talent level isn't what it is. They brought a lot of these guys over from James Madison. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't meant to be a knock, and I know Curt Cignetti has, he in my opinion has kind of, ruffled the feathers. I thought Marcus Freeman did a great job in kind of, the reaction kind of interviews and what it's going to be like going against Indiana comparatively to Cignetti, who really kind of led with downplaying or kind of, dismissing Notre Dame a bit. But at the end of the day, he has a 50% roster of JMU athletes, right? And so you can't tell me that talent should stack up to what Notre Dame has, what Ohio State has, what Oregon has, what Texas has. And so what do you do when you have a 50% JMU roster? You run plays like this where if you execute it how you're supposed to, you can get positive yardage. They're not looking to necessarily hit the big home runs every play like Navy and a traditional triple option offense. They just want to stay ahead of the chains, 3 to 4 yards, get the third and short, and have a manageable chance, essentially. And, that's And that's what NIU did to Notre Dame at the end of the day, right? And so it can work. So you cannot dismiss Indiana because of how well they're coached, and they are going to execute. And if you don't do what you need to do defensively, they have an answer. It's just a matter of can you get there quickly downhill and fit how you're supposed to.
All right. You got anything else to show us?
Yeah, so that was kind of, board one. Did that immediately go to the next one? Or are we still kind of on the
you're on the next one now. Yeah.
Nice. Internet is actually kind of doing some things right now. So this is another play that they ran inside the 5-yard line. And this play they ran with their backup quarterback, because Curtis Rourke got hurt for a couple of games with his thumb injury throughout the season. And so I think the reason why I wanted to show this play is it shows that this offense is still manageable, even if you don't have Curtis Rourke. And again, I think that shows kind of it reinforces some of the stuff I was just talking about in terms of well-coached execution. If you do what you're supposed to, the offense can still run like a well-oiled machine. And it has plays that are manageable for, anyone that's quarterback. I mean, I guess not anyone. Like I couldn't go out there and probably, execute this play. I might have a chance, but anyone who's at least trained to be a quarterback, right? Like they can go in there and make this sort of play. So I thought that this look is interesting because, again, the ball is on the right hash, 11 personnel, one running back, one tight end. You have two wide receivers split out to the right. They're not stacked. So you got, one guy outside the numbers, one guy just on the inside of the numbers. The wide receiver to the field side is going to be in the hash. And what's interesting about this play now is everyone has heard of RPO plays, right? Like run pass option. Indiana is going to run what is kind of called pro plays, and that means pass run option. They're not looking to run the ball on first read. They're actually looking to pass the ball, and if the pass look isn't there, then the run kind of provides the security valve, and that's kind of opposite of traditionally on the RPO. You got the mesh point, and you're given that ball unless you see the pass that you want, right? But this is more of a pro play because pass is first and then run option. So what's going to happen here on this play is the number 2 wide receiver, the inside wide receiver into the boundary. He is going to go into motion here across the field. So he goes across in motion, and then obviously what's going to happen after that is the safeties are going to do what's called rock and roll. So this is going to roll to the back, and then this safety is going to rock down and then basically kind of pick up this wide receiver coming in motion, right? So on the snap of the ball, what's going to happen here is, again, this running back is going to come down and show run, but as this wide receiver clears the formation, if the quarterback is looking in this area immediately, and if he has the numbers, he is going to pass the ball now, right? And so the offensive line on this play is still showing zone to the right, but what also has to be kind of brought up on this play is coming on blocking off the line of scrimmage. So what does that mean? When this guy clears the formation, the pass has to stay behind the line of scrimmage, right? Because this wide receiver is blocking before the ball has been thrown. But quarterback has numbers in this area that he likes. He throws the screen to the wide receiver. This outside wide receiver down blocks, seals this thing off, and again, they go in for a touchdown. But say they didn't have the numbers there, then it would have just been this, standard, typical zone read to the right. He can hand it off to the running back, and we can get going. But again, this is a pro play. He is looking to pass the ball first, and if his numbers aren't there, then he's just going to go hand it off zone right, off to the right side. So again, this is hard for defenses because of you just have to have everyone a hat for every situation. It's more things to kind of be responsible for. It's almost being, again, it's like the triple option. You have to account for, every sort of run or pass element that could present itself.
I like this comment from Tom Frawley. He says, I love the lateral speed of the Notre Dame defense to shut down this IU offense. And, when we talk about, the level of competition that Indiana has played and the fact that Okay, they've got an 11-1 record against the level of competition they've played, but what are the two closest games that they played? The loss to Ohio State and a narrow win against Michigan. And where has Notre Dame been exposed when they've got to the college football playoff before with this kind of thing, with the speed against the truly elite teams? Like that always showed up. That was a big differentiator. And, that was in a 4-team playoff. And that's, I think that, when you look at the, again, like the level of athlete who's going to be out there on the field, I think that this is going to make a huge difference over the course of this game because Notre Dame is going to have the much better athletes. And while Indiana is very well coached, so is Notre Dame. And I just think that, the better athletes with the speed to cover these spaces is going to make a big difference over the course of a game like this and a matchup like this.
I got two things for you. I think first and foremost, Notre Dame only beats itself in this game. If they don't execute, if they make mental errors, etc., like they're not going to get outmatched, out physicaled, out talented by IU. It would be basically discipline type loss essentially. And I agree with exactly what you were saying. This is just like Navy, just like Army. They've run these. This is just a different version of a traditional triple option offense. But what kills these sort of option offenses? It is speed and space. It is lateral quickness and closing the gap and coming downhill quickly. And if there's something that Notre Dame is really good at, it is having the linebackers in the secondary to do just that. And so I believe that, again, if Notre Dame does what they were supposed to, I'm going to, with my bookie, take Notre Dame to cover at least 6.5.
Okay. All right. Jesse's calling his shot right now. He likes it. I like that call. Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's continue this monumentous rapid fire.
Let's do it. Marcus Freeman said earlier this week that nose guard Howard Cross will be back for Notre Dame's college football playoff matchup against Indiana. Scale of 1 to 10, how important is getting Howard Cross back for this game?
Yeah, it's got to be 10 out of 10. He's, a guy who preseason had aspirations and is on, he is probably going to be drafted and end up on an NFL roster. In my opinion, he is the anchor of that defensive line with Riley Mills. He has the seniority. He has the leadership. And, I think that especially against USC and, some of the things you need to do to shut down they lacked pressure against USC, and I think he would have helped contribute to that. So I think he provides, providing pressure. And then against an offense like this that we just kind of got into with IU, you have to be able to shut down that run option first. You have to be able to take away, the essentially the ability to run, because I think that's where Notre Dame is going to really start to press IU. So having him back is really essential for both of those things, creating pressure and also, eating up double teams and getting into some of those run lanes.
Before I answer my question, and you had some great, points that you made right there. Someone just pointed out, and I didn't even think about this before. We've had this LSU troll in the show, in the chat here tonight, because Salty asked during the mailbag if the guy from Tiger Bait owed Brian an apology for the whole dumpster fire comment. So that guy shows up. Someone must have told him we were talking about him, and he shows up and says that Notre Dame is a dumpster fire. But somebody just pointed out that Notre Dame, and because he's like talking about, we play in the SEC and all this stuff. Notre Dame and LSU both played USC and Texas A&M this year. Guess who beat both of those two teams, and guess who lost to both of those teams this year? Can you take a guess?
Oh, I can. It is a great cross-examination.
Great point. I didn't even see. I got to see who made that put. D Troll Hunter. Boom.
You get extra credit today, my good sir.
Yes. There is no comeback from that, in my opinion. So as to the Howard Cross, this is a 10 out of 10 for me because Pro Football Focus pointed out, I saw this week, Notre Dame's 19 sacks from interior defensive linemen are they lead the nation. Notre Dame's interior defensive line have the most sacks of any interior defensive line, 19 this season. Riley Mills leads the way with 6.5. Donovan Heinisch has 3.5. Howard Cross has 4. Here's the interesting thing. While Mills has 6.5, Cross was injured in the Florida State game. Of course, the game that Riley Mills had 3 sacks, but Cross missed the last 3 games of the regular season. Riley Mills has only had a half a sack while Howard Cross has been out. Heinisch had 1 sack. Gabriel Rubio had 1 against USC. They need that presence from Howard Cross in there, not only for the disruptiveness and for some of the stuff that you're talking about, because it also lets these other guys eat while they're in there as well. And it allows a guy like Riley Mills to also be even more disruptive when you have to account for both of those guys at the same time. So it's a 10 out of 10 for me. Like, I think that they have an opportunity to just blow up the line of scrimmage when both of those guys are in there together.
Agreed.
So flag planting has, of course, become a thing. It became a thing at the end of the regular season after a bunch of rivalry games. Marcus Freeman shared his thoughts on flag planting when he was on Robert Griffin III's Out of Pocket podcast this week. Here is what he had to say.
I wouldn't be too high on somebody else planting a flag in our home stadium. But for us, let's get our butts in the locker room and celebrate team glory together. Don't take a flag and plant on the field. Like, let's go into the locker room and spend that time together, celebrating the way we need to. Like, you put so much work into this thing.
That's why I love talking to you, because if you get beat, you earn it on the field.
Right.
Beat them on the field.
That's right.
Don't wind up at the middle of the field after the game, ready to throw fisticuffs because they're trying to plant the flag. But what you just said sparked something to me, because when you plant the flag, you're making it about them.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Whereas if you go to the locker room and you celebrate and you go to the fans and you do the fight song, you're making it about us.
That's right. It's a bad look for college football. You don't want people looking at highlights saying, well, that's how college football players act. They're fighting each other after the game. That's not what this is about. It's a physical, violent game, but I like to say it's a beautiful game. It's true.
All right, Jess. So what do you think about that take from Marcus Freeman on the flag planting?
Yeah, I think I am 100% on board with what Marcus Freeman was saying. It's not about, when you plant the flag, you make it about them and not about us at the end of the day. You are bringing attention to them and not about us, because like he said, why do you want to do that in someone else's basically confines, right? Like, go back into the locker room with everyone who, put in the hard work, the coaching staff, training staff, players, whoever, and celebrate with them, because it is what you guys did as a group, right? Like, you don't need to do that or show that public display in front of everyone at an opposing stadium. Just, like, I've been in locker rooms after wins. You start blaring music, dancing around, just doing stupid stuff. Like, that's what you do after a big win, right? Like,
right.
Whatever you want to do. And I think that moment is only, most intimate when you can do that in your own locker room, again, with everyone who put in the work. So I loved what Marcus Freeman said. And I'm like RG3, I kind of went both ways, but he really kind of swung me in that ultimate direction. And I'll have a caveat, and I know it goes off of kind of what you are getting ready to follow up this with. So I'll kind of save my next thought until we play the next clip.
So we play the next one. Okay. I did think I did like that spin, because I hadn't thought about it that way.
Right.
That planting the flag, you're making it about the other team rather than making it about yourself. And I love that. And that's obviously, some of the things that Marcus Freeman sort of preaches all the time. It's about
team glory.
Us. Yeah. Team glory. And, with team glory, team success come a lot of other things. And I'll save the rest for after this next one as well, because Riley Leonard and Jeremiah Love were also on RG3's pod, and he asked them their thoughts also about flag planting. And I thought that, there was some more interesting stuff here.
How would you guys react as players if USC had won that game or any game on your field and wanted to go to the middle of the field and plant their flag in the middle? How are you reacting?
I was like, me personally, I'm not going for that. Like, he's not. I had the same reaction as the other teams we got to fight. I ain't going to lie.
But that's college football. Like, that's the best part about college football, though. It's like the rivalries.
Yes.
Like,
Expand on it, Riley. Talk to him.
I mean, shoot, like, when you see, like, the worst thing could be if a team plants their flag at your stadium.
Right.
And y'all are just good with it.
Right.
Like, everybody wants to talk about school spirit now with the college football players and them not being a part of the team or not being a part of, like, the college culture that they had there at the school.
Right.
When you see guys defending their school the way they do and putting their, careers kind of at stake, right? I think that's a good thing. I think it's a great thing for college football for two rivals to really, kind of hate each other.
I don't disagree. I think that the pageantry of college football is something that makes it so special, right? Is it a bad look for teams to be fighting after the game? Yeah, 100%. It's a bad look.
Yeah.
But if you don't want them to plant the flag, win the game.
Win the game.
Right? It's true. Fight during the game.
Yeah.
Right? Fight your tail off to win each rep so that you don't have to worry about that in the end.
I thought it was really interesting hearing Riley Leonard kind of, like saying what he said there with, like the rivalry stuff. He's absolutely right. I mean, that is one of the greatest parts about college sports is people do get so intense, with their emotions and their feelings about these games, especially when it is a rivalry. But like hearing, Riley Leonard without coming out and say it, like Jay Love was talking about it. And I completely agree with what he's saying, while I, disagree, with the concept of going onto someone else's field and, trying to plant your flag and all that stuff. And Michael brought up the Michigan State game in 2005. I was there for that. And I thought it was really, childish of Michigan State when they did it. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, I'm sitting on the Notre Dame side of things. But I completely agree. Like I said it after it happened, like if I'm an Ohio State player, that's exactly how I would have reacted if I see these Michigan guys bringing this big flag and this big pole out on the field. Like, you think you're going to plant that thing on my field, on our field? That's not happening here.
Yeah, I think if I were, a head coach, I would, first and foremost, we're not planting flags. Like, I completely agree with that. There's no need to plant flags.
We're not taking a flag. We're not planting a flag in anybody's field. Yeah, exactly.
Right. But if a flag is trying to be planted on my field, we're not going for that. Like Riley Leonard, Leonard and Jeremiah Love said, we are not. And that's the mentality I would want my players to have, because there is that is the right mentality of, this is our house, this is our home, we are going to protect it. We are, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I get it. I don't know if I would be out there fist fighting people, but I'm not letting them plant the flag, essentially.
No, the flag is not, that is not happening. Like you said, like at the very least, it's like, we can, you can go tackle him, I guess, right? You can tackle the flag or tackle the guy or whatever it happens to be. The other side of this thing is this Ohio lawmaker, Josh Williams.
Oh, my gosh.
Wants this, he's trying to have this law passed. It says no person shall plant a flagpole with the flag attached to it in the center of the football field at Ohio Stadium of the Ohio State University on the day of a college football competition, whether before, during, or after the competition. Whoever violates this section is guilty of a felony of the 5th degree. I mean,
so I don't want to
talk about getting in your feelings over losing. Come on, man.
I don't want to give this a ton of attention and thought, so I'll be short and sweet with this one. It is soft, and that is a lot of what Ohio State does after things like this. They're soft and cry about, oh, woe me. And two, I mean this in the most sincere way, it is offensive to people who actually commit felonies.
Yes, that's actually a great way to put it. Like things that actually deserve to be considered a felony. I mean, come on.
So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah. I can't disagree. So Leonard also talked about on the Out of Pocket podcast some of the trash talk that Jeremiah Love does during games.
Earlier about him talking trash. Like, this dude doesn't say much, like, throughout the week. On game day, I'm telling you, it's different. And, like, it's not necessarily talking trash whenever he's about to get the ball. It's talking trash when it's a QB run. So if it's a QB run, he'll point at the D lineman that he's pulling for, which we run a lot of QB runs.
Yes.
He'll point at the D lineman he's going for and just tell him he's finna knock his head off. Like, it ain't even like talking trash when he's finna get the ball. Like, he's trying to lay somebody out for me. He'll tell me that all the time.
Last game, USC.
He said, "Follow me."
Follow me, bro. I'm finna knock somebody out. I really be trying to, do my thing, do what's best for the team, and especially for Riley. He be doing all this hurling stuff, trying to get himself hurt. I'm trying to be bro, stay on the ground. Yeah. Last game, he got completely flipped.
Yeah, I did.
Dang, they're on the goal line. I'm like, bro, stay on your feet. So when they call QB run, man, I'm just, Riley, got you, boy. Just follow me.
How about Jeremiah Love calling out his shots at defenders?
I loved this interview, and I love that bit because you finally got to see some of the personality of Jeremiah.
This was a great interview. Like you told me, I wasn't going to listen to it. I saw the thing, that I played, for Marcus Freeman about the flag planting. And it's like, I usually don't listen to these interviews. And you were telling me last night that you listened to it. It was a really good interview. Like Marcus Freeman started off, a little bit with some of the canned, coach speak type responses. But I definitely felt like, and it's Robert Griffin III and his wife, Greta, who is a track athlete. I think she went to Florida State. She said she used to compete against Notre Dame, but she's part of the podcast as well. Yeah. Heptathlete. Yeah. And, I definitely think that, one, RG3's personality, two, the fact that he is a former player, so there's some great relatability and everything. I just thought it was a really good, really entertaining. Like you said, he asked some good questions and got some good responses out of it. I thought it was really good.
They had the typical, like canned questions, and he literally said, "All right, time to get into the hard stuff now." And they asked, honest questions, I thought. And so, to get into this one about, Jeremiah Love calling his shots against defenders, I think that's great. And I think what that shows, and I think why I'm so confident about this team in past years, everyone's playing for each other. It's not about personal stats or how many yards I get or touchdowns. He knows that stuff's going to happen. But part of it, too, is executing to your best ability like you would on a touchdown and getting that block for Riley Leonard. It just goes back to the team glory, the team success. And I love it, though, because, again, it's like there's nothing better than pointing someone out and saying, we're going to run the ball right at you, and I'm going to knock your face off.
And then doing it. Did you ever have a guy line up and tell you that he was going to knock you on your butt when he was coming at you?
So there were offensive linemen. There were running backs who, that's definitely happened before. But I also kind of keyed in where eyes were going to, like that was, and again, that wasn't verbal, but that was just kind of, seeing where a lot of people just like to look where they're about to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've had some of that before, and it's gone vice versa. I know what play is coming, and I've been like, I'm gonna, you're not going anywhere. And I didn't say it like that, but that's the underlying concept.
Right. Yeah. And like Jeremiah Love calling out his shots, and RG3 was talking about, well, you got to start running some counter off of that as well.
Tricking some people.
They're coming at you. But I like, the Riley Leonard staying on his feet. I mean, I think, haven't we all probably thought that more than once? Like seeing him flip all the way over.
I hold my breath every time.
I know. It's like, what were we worried about the most with Riley Leonard coming into this season? Is he going to get broken in half? Is he going to be durable enough to hold up? I completely agree with what Jeremiah Love was saying in regards to hey, Riley.
So I think that also shows, Riley Leonard's impact on the team, right? Because Jeremiah Love is thinking that's the last guy that can go down right now, right? And so I just think that shows the confidence that they have in Riley Leonard, the leadership that Riley Leonard presents as the quarterback of this team, and then also, how dynamic Riley Leonard is. They need him as he is what oils the machine, right? Like he's what opens up the Jeremiah Love runs, the Jadarian Price runs, the ability to make the passes, his own big run plays. Like they tick around Riley Leonard. And so again, I just think that shows the level of importance that he has on this offense.
No, absolutely. And I think that the buy-in that he's given to Notre Dame, and you heard Love talk about, like after NIU, he said, he was watching Leonard and, just watch the way, like he went about his work and also interacting with, like people on the team and, all these different things. And I think that, like the fact that I think that the fact that they all respond to each other, and I think Love also talked, at some point in there about just how close this group is, and I think a lot of that starts with the quarterback and like the fact that they do play for each other so much. So let me see. Go ahead and throw this. Antoine wants to know if you played with anyone in high school that played Division I football.
I mean, everyone will recognize the name Drew Tranquil. Played against him in a sectional championship. We were beating him so bad that he literally took the reins and became the Wildcat quarterback. And a combination of we couldn't stop him, and our coach also couldn't stop himself from making dumb decisions. And we ended up losing that game. And now Drew Tranquil plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. Garrick Dieter was a wide receiver for Washington High School. He went
Another
on and
Kansas City Chief, best friend
he
of
was
Patrick Mahomes.
yeah, he was, you probably saw him on his top 10 moment on Bowling Green. He had like 3 touchdowns that were all like one-handed in one game.
Played for Alabama for a year.
Yeah, goes to be a grad transfer at Alabama and then gets some time with the Chiefs for a little bit. There's trying to think if there's probably more if I
But
sat
you
down
had
and
2
thought about it.
teammates. Shaq Van played for Eastern Michigan as a running back.
And Danny Penner actually was a tight end / became offensive lineman for Ball State. And he actually started against the Patriots a couple weeks ago at center, and they picked up a big win. Or guard, might have been center guard. I can't remember.
Offensive lineman for the Colts now, Danny Pinter. Another, couple South Bend Adams guys. And I'm trying to remember like the rest of the conference. I'm sure that there were a few, like here and there who probably
played
like
against some
Penn.
baseball guys. Tanner Tolley.
There were a couple other guys on that Washington team that Dieter played for. I think one of them started off at Ohio State and he ended up transferring. Perkins, yeah. And then there was another, the quarterback as well was a really good.
He ended up being an athlete, but his name was D. Morgan.
Yeah, there you go, Morgan. That's who it was.
I think he ended up being like a safety, I want to say, in college.
Yeah. And again, that was from Salty was asking what interview show that was. It's called the Out of Pocket Podcast with Robert Griffin III. Out of Pocket. OUTTA.
1 hour. It's great. You get Marcus Freeman, Jeremiah Love, Riley Leonard. Good questions, hard questions, funny questions. It's all good stuff.
Final thought from that pod. Fill in the blank. They asked Leonard what his breakthrough moment is in college, and he said it hasn't happened yet. Leonard's breakthrough moment is blank.
This playoff run that he's about to go on. I think that's got to be his breakthrough moment. He's on the national stage. This is what he came to Notre Dame for. And if he really wants to, get his name out there, how do you do that? You make a run in the college football playoff and you win the national championship at Notre Dame. And so, I think Notre Dame is well equipped for a run, and I think his breakout moment is going to be executing at a high level as the quarterback for Notre Dame and going on this run.
Preston, I think TB stands for Tiger Bait, says, this is a great show. Stop putting me in timeout. I don't know if he's really, like saying this is a great show or if he's just sucking up so we won't put him in timeout. You were getting a little trollish there for a while, Preston.
Maybe he said timeout and just watch
if your intentions are true, I'll stop putting you in timeout. It felt like you were showing up just trying to stir things up. So
he watched the show and was like, oh, these guys are actually talking about some good stuff.
All right. So stop putting you in timeout as long as things don't get crazy in the chat. Okay. We'll make a deal here, Preston. We'll go for that. Yeah. To me, it felt like Leonard's breakthrough moment was at Duke. I guess that was last year, like the Clemson game, when the big run, like the touchdown run felt like a signature moment. I think it was a 44-yard touchdown run against Clemson. He leads Duke to an upset over Clemson. They're a top 10 team and all that different stuff. Like that felt very signature. Obviously his season ended up, being, killed by injury, so maybe he doesn't really consider that one. But it's like that felt like a breakout to me. But at the same time, I agree with what you're saying. Like, this sets itself up now for Riley Leonard here at the end of his career for this, to be like a big breakthrough type opportunity that's coming up for him here as he caps his career at Notre Dame. So I agree with what you're saying. Okay, so Todd McShay, David Pollack, Steve Mensch, they were talking about Notre Dame on McShay's podcast this week. Here's an interesting question that they posed.
Would you rather have Will Howard or Riley Leonard as your quarterback right now?
Ooh, good question.
I'm just going to stir the pot a little bit, see what you guys say. I'll tell you right now, I'd rather Leonard. I think he's gotten better. I don't know if I would have said that at the beginning of the year. I think Leonard's got better as a passer.
I'd rather have Leonard's offensive line. That's for dang sure.
Yeah. Okay.
But Ohio State's weapons are freaky. But both big, strong, can run the football,
right,
can be effective, and both aren't. I don't think either one are elite passers.
No.
So
I'm taking Leonard.
But who's the quarterback? Who's the quarterback right now in this playoff that you're going, I'm riding that horse? Or who's the one that you think that can get hot? Because you go down the list and you're like, yeah, it's a good question.
All right. So what do you
never
think?
Gave an answer there?
I guess I think. Did Pollack give an answer? One of them said Riley Leonard for sure.
Yeah, McShay said Riley Leonard, but Pollack never gave one, which was kind of interesting to me. I don't think
Pollack, as we played, some of his cuts yesterday, is really high on Notre Dame though as well, but he didn't want to. I think you're right. I don't think he did. I think he dodged it. So what do you think?
I would go.
Is
Riley
it too
Leonard.
obvious coming from us who are going to pick?
Well, no, I think you can present reasons. I like Todd McShay's answer. I think preseason I would have said Riley Leonard, Will Howard, but I think Riley Leonard has continued to grow as a quarterback throughout this season. I think the biggest knock on him was he can't throw the ball, and while he's not this elite Joe Burrow type passer, he could throw the ball when he needs to, essentially. And I think the biggest thing about Riley Leonard is I just think he's a better leader. And when the game is on the line, I trust that he has the guts. And also that he's going to get it done. I think Will Howard if everything's falling down around him, the wide receivers aren't clicking, I think he's more of a product of what's around him with the wide receivers that he does have. And I know you could probably say the same, like Pollack said about Notre Dame and their offensive line. But again, when push comes to shove, and I need someone to have the guts to make a play, when the game is on the line, I think it's Riley Leonard. I have more faith in him because I think it just means more to him too. Honestly. So it's close, but that's to me what it comes down to. Game on the line. I'm going to trust that Riley Leonard's going to make a damn play.
Yeah. I mean, like we just played the cut about Jeremiah Love telling Riley Leonard to stay on your feet. It's like the guy doesn't care. He has complete and total disregard for his body. He'll do
put it on
everything.
the line.
Yes, that's right. He's going to do he's going to put it all on the line. He's going to do everything that he can to make a play, to make a winning play. I think that's the biggest thing. And Pollack did say that essentially Will Howard has a lot more talent, in terms of the receiving corps, like all the 5 stars that he's got around.
I mean, Notre Dame has
Leonard.
great running backs, but he still has Henderson and Judkins. Like those, on paper, if you said beginning of the season, who's going to be a better tandem, Price or Love or Henderson or Judkins, 10 out of 10 people would have said Henderson and Judkins.
The most interesting thing about this, I don't even know if these guys, fully know this is a decision that Notre Dame literally made a year ago when they were deciding who they were going to take from the transfer portal. I mean, they could have had Will Howard if they wanted Will Howard. They chose Riley Leonard instead. And so Ohio State got the consolation prize.
They got Notre Dame's, seconds. They're leftovers.
Yeah. And Salty makes a great point. Riley Leonard did call me dude when I asked him a question after a game. I can't remember what game that was. It's like, dude.
Next time hit you with the bro.
There's that. But yeah, like, should we play that cut one more time? Because someone was saying Pollack did pick Leonard. Let's go ahead and listen to it one more time here. Okay. Because there's 3 guys on here. The photo that I have, it is Mensch, it is McShay, and it is Pollack. So I think Mensch is the one who asked the question. So here we go.
Would you rather have Will Howard or Riley Leonard as your quarterback right now?
Ooh, good question.
I'm just going to stir the pot a little bit, see what you guys say. I'll tell you right now, I'd rather Leonard. I think he's gotten better. I don't know if I would have said that at the beginning of the year. I think Leonard's got better as a passer.
I'd rather have Leonard's offensive line. That's for dang sure.
Yeah. Okay.
But Ohio State's weapons are freaky. But both big, strong, can run the football, can be effective, and both aren't. I don't think either one are elite passers. No. So
I'm taking Leonard.
But who's the quarterback? Who's the quarterback right now in this playoff that you're going, I'm riding that horse? Or who's the one that you think that can get hot? Because you go down the list and you're like, yeah, it's a good question.
You see, I don't think Pollock answered it. Because that was Mensch that said, I'm taking Leonard. That was the third guy who said that.
Pollock's voice is very distinguishable, and I know he didn't give an answer.
Yeah. Yeah. But he's saying, who's the quarterback that you're going to ride in this group? Like Klubnik? Ewers?
He's not 100% proven to me.
Iamaleava?
It's got to be Gabriel.
Yeah. I mean, he's a Heisman finalist, right?
To me,
but honestly, if Gabriel is number one, there's probably, like a pretty good distance between number two, but like I'd have a hard time not putting Riley Leonard probably number two behind Dylan of the 12 teams that are 12 quarterbacks who are in the playoffs. I don't know about you. I think Ohio's looking at Ohio State specifically, I think Ohio State would still be where they are if Kyle McCord had stayed. I don't think Notre Dame would be where they are without Riley Leonard here.
Oh, I 100% agree with that.
And that includes if Will Howard was here instead. Are you still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can't see you. That's why your screen went black.
Am I back?
You are back.
Okay.
You are back to black. Well, we talked about the Belichick stuff earlier. This was Outland just threw this in here. So he says, so what's the deal? We winning this game or is there doubt? Based on like what I have, been told by other fans this week, I think there needs to be doubt because we're not supposed to, jump wholeheartedly on the Notre Dame train because apparently that will make the team overconfident. So we're not supposed to do that. So what do you think, Jess?
Oh, Notre Dame's winning this game. They just need to execute like they've been doing in the last few games. I said earlier in the show, IU, very well-coached team. They're going to execute their plays. And if Notre Dame doesn't do what they're supposed to, assignment sound, they will, do their thing, put up points, and potentially win the game. It could be. It is a more talented, well-coached NIU team, and we saw what happened against NIU. Notre Dame doesn't execute how they're supposed to, they can get into trouble. But if Notre Dame, they have better athletes, they can play better in space, they have better lateral quickness, they have a more physical, better run game. Like, they have the recipe to be not only the winner of this game, but make a deep playoff run, but you got to do it step at a time, right? So, again, they do what they're supposed to, they win this game.
I agree. Again, Indiana is where they are because they are an extremely well-coached, disciplined football team. They turn other teams over. They don't make a lot of mistakes. But I think that at the end of the day, Notre Dame is the better, also well-coached football team. And I think you said it earlier. Notre Dame only loses this game if they beat themselves in this game.
Yeah.
That's how I look
Fumbles,
at it.
interceptions, muff kicks, muff punts. That's the stuff that beats you in these type of games. You can't give IU extra possessions, and you just can't beat yourself. So just play good football. Play what you've been doing and getting better at the last 2.5, 3 months. That's really all it is. And I think if you're Marcus Freeman, the biggest thing, in my opinion, that you need to do is continue to create an environment filled with hunger, with violence, with our opponent is faceless and nameless. We're Notre Dame, and we're going to give you 4 quarters of FU football, and we're going to beat you in, right? Like, that's what they've got to do. And that's on Marcus Freeman to continue to make them hungry to make them want to exert their will even more in this game.
Yes, and that's a good note to end on. Great stuff tonight in the mailbag. Great stuff in the whiteboard, and some fun I think that we had with rapid fire as well with some of those comments. Again, if you didn't hear that, RG3 podcast, Out of Pocket, with Marcus Freeman, Riley Leonard, and Jeremiah Love, all on there. Good stuff. I would recommend checking it out. All right, we're going to wrap it up with that. Hit the like button before you leave. Thank you very much, Salty. Appreciate you and appreciate everybody being here tonight. We started an hour later than usual, but we're we run close to 8 o'clock. I'll be doing a little bit of basketball tomorrow night. Big one coming up. Notre Dame UConn at Purcell Pavilion. I actually, when I was at the gym this afternoon, I'll give one final thought on this. Let me see. Look up on StubHub real quick, Jess, if you can see what the price of Notre Dame UConn tickets are going for tomorrow. These two guys were in the locker room talking when I was getting ready to leave the gym. They were like, big game coming up tomorrow night. And the guy was like, yeah, I was trying to get tickets. They're going for $1,000, he said. $1,000 for Notre Dame UConn women's basketball tomorrow night. And so he's like, I couldn't go. Can't afford $1,000 for that. But
they must have been talking about the football game, because I'm seeing tickets for $30 and $50.
He was talking about they specifically were talking about basketball, because the guy was like, yeah, big game coming up tomorrow. And he's like, huh? And he goes, yeah, that Notre Dame UConn game. And the guy said $1,000 courtside. I'm not talking about up arena. He said $1,000
courtside. Okay.
Yeah. He specifically said courtside. So I don't know.
It's a big one.
It is. Should be fun. Got some fun coming up tomorrow night. We had fun last week when Notre Dame beat Texas. Preston's back. Preston, have a good night. And hit the like button before you leave. That includes you, Preston TB. And we'll talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.